The galaxy had once been a place of profound order, ruled by a powerful coalition of ancient species. Each civilization had their place, highly advanced, long-lived, and content in the steady rhythms of intergalactic diplomacy and commerce. The Elders, a council made up of the galaxy's oldest and wisest beings, had ruled for millennia, guiding the galactic stage with an iron fist wrapped in the velvet of tradition. They were the unquestioned masters, their dominance reinforced by the superiority of their technology in centuries-old alliances. That was before humanity. It began in the unassuming corner of the galaxy, on a planet known as Earth. The humans were not the strongest, nor the most advanced. In fact, they were an oddity in the vastness of space, living on a relatively insignificant world by galactic standards. Their species had struggled with their own nature for millennia. War, division, and strife were common themes in their history. Yet, in the face of such chaos, humanity had done something extraordinary: they adapted. The first signs of human potential were visible when the human race began to extend their reach into space. Primitive by galactic standards, humanity's early ventures were met with skepticism. The first alien civilizations that encountered humans wrote them off as a primitive species, still locked in the grip of their turbulent history. Few believed they would last long, and fewer still thought them capable of achieving anything beyond the confines of their home system. However, humanity's greatest strength was its unpredictability. The species' innate drive to explore, to learn, and to survive fueled rapid advancements. While older civilizations took centuries to develop even the most basic concepts of energy manipulation, humanity cracked the code of faster-than-light travel in less than 100 years. They didn't do it by following the conventional paths of galactic progress, but by thinking outside the constraints of traditional science and engineering. By the time the Elders noticed, it was too late. Humanity had already entered the galactic stage and begun to make waves. It started with a series of small, seemingly insignificant skirmishes. Human ships, driven by a newfound ability to bend the fabric of spacetime itself, began to conquer systems that were considered neutral by the galactic powers. These uninhabited or sparsely populated systems offered little strategic value, but their importance was more psychological than political. Humans were asserting their presence, their expansion swift and relentless, a glaring signal that they had far more potential than anyone had anticipated. The Elders, arrogant in their long-standing power, initially dismissed the human threat. After all, they were a young species. There had been countless others that had risen and fallen before them. Why should the humans be any different? But humans were different. Unlike the elder species, who had grown comfortable in their prosperity, the humans were driven by necessity. They had always known the feeling of scarcity, of competition, and of a fierce drive to overcome insurmountable odds. It was this very spirit that allowed them to adapt and innovate faster than anyone could have predicted. At first, the Elders tried diplomacy. They sent emissaries to Earth, offering treaties and assurances of peace. They spoke of cooperation, of knowledge sharing, and of the strength that could come from unity. Humanity listened, as they always did, but they were wary. Their history with peace had been tumultuous, always fragile, always prone to be shattered by betrayal, greed, or miscalculation. They weren't naive. When humanity finally declared its intentions to the galaxy, the declaration was not one of war or hostility, it was one of survival. They announced that their species would expand across the galaxy, but not as conquerors or oppressors. They wanted unity, but on their own terms. Humanity would stand on equal footing with the ancient powers, not beneath them. The Elders, of course, saw this as nothing more than audacity, a reckless, misplaced confidence. But humanity had no intention of being mere equals. They were not satisfied with standing alongside the galaxy's ancient species, they wanted to lead it. They wanted to take over the galaxy. In a few short decades, human colonies sprawled across dozens of star systems. Entire fleets were constructed, bristling with cutting-edge technology. The humans had one edge that no other species had ever utilized before: their ability to unite across cultural, political, and social lines. They weren't a fractured collection of separate nations or factions. Humans, despite their early history of war, had come to understand that their survival depended on cooperation, and they brought that unity with them to the stars. The galaxy watched with a mixture of awe, fear, and disbelief as humanity moved swiftly toward domination. The ancient powers, so accustomed to control, began to see that the tides of the galaxy were shifting in ways they never thought possible. And what terrified them most wasn't the humans' superior technology or their rapid expansion. It was the undeniable truth that humanity, for all its flaws and struggles, had the will to succeed. They had the courage to claim what they wanted, and now, the galaxy would have to reckon with them. The age of humans had begun, and there was no turning back. The galaxy's first real test of humanity's power came not from the elders themselves but from a fierce alliance of lesser-known species, those who felt threatened by the human rise and feared the inevitable shift in power. The coalition, known as the Galacvar, was a loose grouping of warriors, traders, and mercenaries who had long profited from the status quo. They had watched as humanity spread its influence and resources, and they saw the newcomers as a direct challenge to their hold on trade routes and territories. The Galacvar believed that the only way to keep humanity in check was through force. They united their fleets, which, though varied and disjointed, were numerous and well-equipped. Their ships, built with centuries of experience, carried powerful energy weapons and advanced combat strategies that had defeated many in the past. They believed their combined might could halt humanity's rise before it could gain any real ground. The first confrontation came at the border of human-controlled space, an unassuming system known as Lyra 7. This system had been the site of an ongoing human colony project. It was a barren world, but rich in minerals, exactly the type of resource the Galacvar needed to maintain their growing empire. When the Galacvar fleet arrived, they expected to encounter a few human ships, perhaps an exploration vessel or two. They did not anticipate a fully coordinated response from the humans. Humanity had no illusions about their standing in the galaxy. They understood that their technological advancements were still in their infancy compared to the ancient civilizations they faced. But what they lacked in experience, they made up for in tactical innovation. The humans didn't just throw fleets at their enemies, they studied them, adapted their strategies, and employed new technologies in ways that no one had anticipated. The battle for Lyra 7 began with the arrival of the Galacvar's flagship, a massive dreadnought that could obliterate entire fleets with its plasma cannons. It loomed over the system like a thunderstorm on the horizon. The humans, however, were not intimidated. In response, the humans deployed a fleet of their own, built with both efficiency and adaptability in mind. Each human ship was designed to work in unison with its fleetmates, to strike at weak points in the enemy's formation, and to engage in hit-and-run tactics that the Galacvar weren't prepared for. The first shock came when the human ships emerged from the warp point. The Galacvar had expected to see a standard fleet of battleships and cruisers, all using similar tactics they could easily counter. Instead, the humans deployed smaller, more agile ships with advanced stealth technology. These ships could fold space in a way that made them nearly invisible to traditional scanners, rendering the Galacvar's massive flagship sensors useless. From the shadows of the system, the human fleet launched a devastating assault. Small, high-speed fighter ships darted in and out, disabling the Galacvar's communication arrays and leaving their commanders scrambling to coordinate a defense. Meanwhile, human destroyers unleashed volleys of advanced plasma projectiles that breached the shields of the Galacvar's largest ships, causing catastrophic damage. The Galacvar tried to retaliate, but their tactics were too rigid, too predictable. Humanity's adaptability, its willingness to improvise, proved to be their greatest weapon. The humans didn't just fight with strength, they fought with cunning, always looking for the next opportunity, the next weakness in their opponent's defense. After hours of intense conflict, the Galacvar flagship fell. Its enormous frame ruptured as human forces delivered a coordinated strike, breaking through its defenses and striking at its core. The battle was over within a day, and the human forces emerged victorious. The Galacvar, in disbelief, retreated, leaving the system to the humans. The victory was significant, not just for the resources it secured, but for the message it sent across the galaxy: humanity was not a species to be underestimated. Their tactics were unpredictable, their resolve unbreakable, and their ability to adapt faster than any foe made them a formidable opponent. In the aftermath, the galactic community found itself at a crossroads. Some saw the humans as a rising power to be courted and respected. Others saw them as a threat that could destabilize the delicate balance of the galaxy. But one thing was certain: humanity had just proven that they could fight, and win, against the galaxy's best. And the age of humans was just beginning. The Galakvar's defeat sent ripples throughout the galaxy, but it was only the beginning. As humanity's influence continued to expand, several other species, those who had once held the upper hand, began to realize that they were not immune to the rise of humankind. The elders, despite their early dismissal of humanity's potential, began to worry. Their power, though still immense, was no longer unchallenged. The balance of the galaxy had shifted, and the winds of change were impossible to ignore. It was not long before whispers of rebellion began to spread. The first signs of unrest came from a quiet sector of the galaxy, where the Cherii, a race of reptilian beings, had long dominated the trade routes. They were an aggressive species, territorial and proud, but also calculating in their approach to maintaining power. The Cherii had never been one to play by the rules, and they had built their empire by force, treachery, and cunning. But when humanity began expanding into the neighboring systems, their economy began to feel the strain. Human influence, with its superior technology and increasingly integrated trade networks, was cutting into the Cherii's profits. Unable to tolerate the loss of power, the Cherii sought an alliance with the ancient species, the Elders. They believed that together, they could drive humanity back to its home planet and restore the status quo. The Cherii offered up a military force of their own, one large enough to rival humanity's growing fleets, and suggested a series of coordinated strikes that would cripple the human colonies and force them to retreat. But humanity's rise had not been a fluke. Their unity, forged through decades of internal strife and hardship, proved to be their greatest asset. When the Cherii and the Elders began plotting their campaign, they underestimated the humans' ability to unite their forces. The humans had learned well from their past mistakes. They were now a species who could come together to confront a common enemy. In a move that shocked the galaxy, the humans formed a secret coalition with several other disenfranchised species. Some of these were species that had long been oppressed by the elder powers, while others had been on the fringes of galactic politics, too weak to ever challenge the established order. Yet, when they saw the rise of humanity, they recognized an opportunity. The humans had what they lacked: leadership, innovation, and a bold vision of the future. And the humans had something else, something the galaxy had never witnessed before: a shared purpose. The human coalition began to call it the Uprising. The human coalition, led by Admiral Lena Garth, one of the most brilliant tacticians to ever rise through the ranks of human military command, made the first move in what would be the most daring act of rebellion the galaxy had ever seen. Rather than retreat in the face of the Cherii and the Elders' combined forces, they decided to strike first. The target was the Cherii capital, a heavily fortified world known as Shak-Ka-9. It was an industrial hub, the heart of their empire, and the center of their economic power. Striking it would send a message to the entire galaxy: humanity would no longer be a passive player. They would no longer be content with simply surviving. They were coming for dominance, and no one, not even the Elders, was safe from their reach. The attack was meticulously planned. Admiral Garth had studied the Cherii for years, learning their weaknesses and exploiting them to her advantage. She knew that the Cherii's strength lay in their numbers and their brutal tactics, but their strategic thinking was flawed. They were not accustomed to the kind of unconventional warfare that humanity had perfected. So, instead of attacking Shak-Ka-9 head-on, Garth devised a plan that would disrupt their entire infrastructure. Using a fleet of advanced stealth ships, the human coalition infiltrated the outer defenses of the Cherii capital, planting sabotage devices on key power grids and energy reactors. The attacks were swift and deadly. Before the Cherii even realized what was happening, their power supply was crippled, their communications severed, and their defensive systems completely overwhelmed. The human fleet then moved in, attacking the capital with surgical precision. Garth's forces avoided direct confrontation with the Tsheri warships, instead focusing on destabilizing their infrastructure further. Civilian facilities were evacuated, and the human coalition offered safe passage to any Tsheri citizens who wished to surrender, all while systematically dismantling the military presence. The final blow came when a human destroyer, the Phoenix, managed to slip past the Tsheri flagship and deliver a devastating strike to the heart of Shak-Ka-9's orbital defenses. In a final, spectacular explosion, the Tsheri's military infrastructure was decimated. The galaxy watched in shock as the Tsheri, once a proud and powerful empire, crumbled before humanity's might. What had once been seen as a small, insignificant species now held the power to disrupt entire empires. The age of humans had entered a new chapter, one that was marked by their willingness to fight for what they believed in, regardless of the cost. The rebellion had begun, and humanity had made it clear that no power in the galaxy would stand unchallenged. The galaxy would either bend to their will or face the consequences of resistance. The aftermath of the Tsheri's fall reverberated throughout the galaxy. While many feared humanity's increasing power, others saw their victory as a sign of things to come. The most significant shift, however, came from within the Elder Council itself. The once confident rulers of the galaxy were now faced with a dilemma: continue underestimating humanity at their own peril, or find a way to halt the momentum of the human rise before it could reach their doorstep. The Elders, a coalition of the oldest and most advanced species in the galaxy, had spent centuries guiding the affairs of the cosmos. Their vast knowledge, honed through eons of existence, had granted them an air of invulnerability. But what they hadn't anticipated was the one thing that no amount of technology, wisdom, or age could account for: the relentless drive of a species that had nothing to lose and everything to gain. As the human coalition grew stronger, more allies began to flock to their cause. The oppressed species who had long suffered under the rule of the Elders found in humanity not just a new hope, but a symbol of rebellion. They recognized the humans' determination and ambition, knowing that together, they could challenge the centuries-old power structures that had enslaved them for so long. In a historic move, several minor species formed an alliance, calling themselves the Freeborn Coalition. Composed of species that had long been sidelined by the major galactic powers, the Freeborn took up arms beside humanity, determined to cast off their oppressors and fight for a new order. The Freeborn brought with them not only fighters, but vital intelligence that had been suppressed by the Elders, revealing the weaknesses in their advanced technology, their political scheming, and their hidden agendas. But as the Freeborn and humanity prepared for their next push, the Elders weren't sitting idly by. They had seen what humanity was capable of, and they realized that a direct military confrontation might be their only option to maintain control of the galaxy. In a secret conclave, the Elder Council convened. For the first time in millennia, they began to consider the unthinkable: could they take down humanity before it became an unstoppable force? The Council called upon their most powerful and secretive asset, the Xiran. A nearly mythological race known for their almost unparalleled telepathic abilities and their mastery over both time and space, the Xiran had been in hiding for centuries, their existence known only to the highest echelons of the Elders. It was said that they could manipulate the very fabric of reality, twisting time itself to suit their needs. If the Elders were to have any hope of defeating humanity, the Xiran were their last and only hope. The plan was simple, albeit dangerous: send the Xiran to infiltrate humanity's heart. They would enter the human coalition, assuming human forms, and subtly dismantle it from within. Their telepathic abilities would allow them to sow distrust, confusion, and paranoia. They would isolate key leaders, manipulate the Freeborn, and break the bonds that held humanity's alliance together. If the Elders couldn't conquer humanity through force, they would break their unity and hope for the rest to collapse on its own. Meanwhile, humanity's next target was set: the heart of the Elder-controlled sector, a sprawling star system known as Andromas, home to the oldest and most powerful of the Elder species. It was a place of immense cultural significance, a symbol of their unchallenged rule. Taking it would be more than just a strategic victory; it would send an undeniable message to the entire galaxy: humanity was now on the path to becoming the new rulers. Admiral Lena Garth, whose victories had become legendary, was entrusted with the task. She knew the stakes were higher than ever before, and failure was not an option. This wasn't just about military conquest, it was about altering the very future of the galaxy. The human coalition's assault on Andromas began with a precision strike on the outer defensive rings, but they quickly encountered something unexpected, resistance that was more sophisticated and more coordinated than anything they had faced before. Ships that seemed to phase in and out of reality, forces that seemed to be in two places at once, these were the Xiran, and they were not there to negotiate or retreat. The first signs of the Xiran's manipulation were subtle. Key commanders of the human fleet began to receive strange messages, telepathic whispers that made them question their decisions. Tensions ran high, as cracks began to appear in the unity of the human command structure. Conflicting strategies arose, leaders began to doubt one another, and the human forces found themselves grappling with an internal conflict even more insidious than the external threat. Yet, what the Xiran didn't anticipate was the strength of human resolve. In the face of their telepathic manipulations, Admiral Garth refused to buckle. She recognized that something was amiss and soon discovered the truth behind the disturbance within her ranks. She quickly isolated the source and rallied her most loyal officers, uncovering the hidden Xiran infiltrators in her midst. The humans, known for their ingenuity and adaptability, responded swiftly. Using a countermeasure developed in secret, an anti-telepathic device that blocked the Xiran's influence, they turned the tide against the hidden manipulations. With the Xiran's influence neutralized, the humans and their allies pressed forward with renewed determination. But this victory came at a cost. The assault on Andromas was costly in terms of both lives and resources. The galactic stage was now set for an all-out confrontation, one that would determine the fate of humanity and its newfound empire. The elders had shown their hand, and humanity had fought back with unyielding strength. The time for diplomacy and alliances had passed. The galaxy was no longer a place for negotiation, it was a place for war. The turning tide had come. Humanity had survived the first wave of opposition, but the greatest battles were still ahead. The battle for Andromas had been humanity's first true glimpse of what lay ahead, not just galactic war, but a fight for the very survival of their species and way of life. The Elders' final attempt to sabotage humanity's progress with the Xiran had failed, but the cost was high. The warships of the human coalition limped back to their home systems, battered but not broken. Humanity had proven that even the most ancient and powerful forces in the galaxy could be defied. But that was only one part of the equation. To truly seize control, the humans needed to defeat not just the Elders' advanced technology, but the very foundation of their societal structure. The balance of power was tipping. The alliance of the Freeborn Coalition and humanity now controlled vast sectors of space, and the former, once broken species were finding themselves empowered. However, many within the galaxy's political circles feared what humanity's rise might mean. The established order, built on centuries of diplomacy, laws, and traditions, began to unravel. The elder species, those who had always held sway over the galactic narrative, now found themselves at a crossroads. One of the most influential elder factions, the ancient Draelon, took action. Known for their religious zeal and ancient doctrine that governed their actions, the Draelon had been the stewards of the galaxy's central temples, ancient sites that housed the sacred relics of countless species. To them, these sites represented more than just the history of their people, they were the foundation of their identity, the source of their divine right to rule. The rise of humanity threatened everything they believed in. The Draelon leaders, including the High Priestess Anira, declared a holy war, not against humanity directly, but against the very idea of change. They sought to cleanse the galaxy, starting with humanity, of what they saw as the corruption of ancient wisdom. Their forces moved swiftly, targeting the religious heartlands of the freeborn and human colonies. They waged a war not of technology, but of ideology, spreading propaganda and fear, rallying the galaxy's most conservative factions to their side. They promised the return of a golden age, one where the galaxy was united under the doctrine of the ancient gods, where humanity would never be allowed to reach beyond its place. But humanity, once underestimated, had learned the most valuable lesson of all, the power of unity. The Draylon's crusade ignited something far more dangerous than they could have imagined, a unified response from the galaxy's newly empowered species. Not just humanity, but the freeborn and other rebellious factions, rejected the Draylon's vision of the past. Instead, they embraced a future where any species could rise, any individual could have a place, and no one would be relegated to the shadows of the old power structures. Admiral Lena Garth, whose reputation had now grown legendary, was entrusted with leading the charge against the Draylon. But instead of a direct military confrontation, Garth and her fleet embarked on a diplomatic campaign, a war of ideas. She had learned through her battles that humanity's greatest strength was their adaptability and their willingness to confront new concepts head-on. The freeborn, empowered by their own victories, rallied behind her. The first step of this new campaign was the creation of the Alliance for the Future, a new treaty forged between the Human Coalition and the Freeborn Coalition, which promised not just peace, but mutual advancement in technology, culture, and governance. Simultaneously, the humans deployed their best diplomats and influencers to the heart of the Draylon-controlled sectors. The goal was not to destroy their faith, but to show them that the universe was vast, and change was inevitable. They introduced the Draylon to new forms of governance, technologies, and cultures. Slowly, and in many cases painfully, the Draylon leaders found themselves at a crossroads. The galaxy was evolving faster than they could keep up. Their ideologies, steeped in ancient dogma, began to fracture. But it wasn't just their systems that were threatened, it was their very existence. The Draylon High Priestess, Anira, once resolute in her belief that the galaxy's power structure could only exist through the eternal rule of the ancients, began to see the cracks in her own convictions. The universe was no longer a place where only the old gods could hold sway, it was a dynamic, vibrant place where anyone could rise. She and her closest allies gathered in secret to discuss their next move. Their followers, devoted but fearful, were starting to question the divine right of their leaders. The pressure of their failing influence weighed on the Draylon. In a final, desperate move, Anira made the call to launch a massive strike against humanity's most influential homeworld, Earth itself. If the Draylon could destroy the birthplace of the humans, they believed they could extinguish the heart of the rebellion. They amassed a fleet that dwarfed any previous force, a symbolic attempt to crush humanity once and for all. The humans knew this strike was coming. They had anticipated it, and it was part of the reason for their strategic positioning. The battle for Earth would be the culmination of everything humanity had fought for. This was no longer just a fight for territory or dominance, it was a fight for the very soul of the galaxy. The outcome of this battle would either secure humanity's place at the head of a new galactic order, or it would see them crushed beneath the weight of the galaxy's ancient powers. As the Draylon fleet descended on Earth, the human coalition prepared for the most intense battle of their lives. But this time, they were not only fighting with their military might, they were fighting with their heart, their conviction, and the belief that they had something greater to offer the galaxy than the stagnant rule of the old guard. The collapse of the old order was imminent. The galaxy would never be the same again. The Draylon fleet loomed over Earth's atmosphere like a storm that could not be outrun. Their ships, massive and intimidating, filled the sky with the weight of their presence, a final symbol of the ancient order they believed could never be toppled. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's greatest power, humanity, stood on the precipice of total annihilation. But what the Draylon hadn't counted on was the unwavering spirit of humankind, nor the unity that had been forged through countless struggles. Admiral Lena Garth stood on the command bridge of the Vanguard, her flagship. The sight before her was unimaginable, a fleet of Draylon warships darkening the sky above Earth. Their weapons were primed, their intentions clear. The humans, however, had been preparing for this moment their entire existence. The battle for Earth wasn't just about military power, it was about the survival of everything humanity had built. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, the humans didn't hesitate. Every ship in the fleet had been strategically placed for a reason. The lines were drawn. Earth had become a symbol of resistance, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. As the Draylon initiated their first wave of orbital bombardments, humanity's greatest strength was revealed, they fought together, as one. Human ingenuity, not raw numbers, would be their greatest weapon. The first move was a coordinated defense using a new technology, phase shields, designed to neutralize the Draylon's devastating energy weapons. The shields absorbed the incoming fire and redirected it back at the enemy ships. The Draylon fleet had never encountered anything like it. For the first time, their mighty weapons failed to break through. The human ships retaliated with pinpoint accuracy, launching devastating missiles and kinetic projectiles designed to pierce the Draylon's defenses. On Earth's surface, human forces mobilized in the largest planetary defense operation ever undertaken. Ground forces, bolstered by freeborn warriors and their allies, took to the cities, preparing for the inevitable invasion. Earth was ready to resist. Yet it wasn't just the soldiers, the generals, or the fleet that defined humanity's spirit, it was the citizens. All across Earth, people came together to fight, to innovate, and to protect what was theirs. The streets became filled with volunteers, engineers repurposed civilian infrastructure into makeshift weapons factories, artists designed holographic decoys to confuse Draylon targeting systems, farmers and medical personnel worked alongside soldiers, determined to ensure that the defense of Earth was not just a military endeavor but a collective will to survive. The first wave of Draylon soldiers that landed on Earth was met with ferocious resistance. The Draylon, masters of ancient combat techniques, had expected an easy victory over what they considered an inferior species. Instead, they were confronted by humans who fought not only with their weapons but with every ounce of their ingenuity. Where the Draylon's elite forces once dominated, they now found themselves bogged down by guerrilla tactics, hidden traps, and an unexpected network of resistance from all walks of life. The Draylon had underestimated humanity's resilience. In space, the battle intensified. Admiral Garth's fleet moved with precise coordination, each ship moving as if it were an extension of her will. The Draylon, despite their technological advantage, could not keep up with the unpredictable maneuvers of the human fleet. They tried to adapt, but every move they made was countered. The humans fought not just with strategy, but with heart, driven by the knowledge that the fate of the galaxy rested on this one final confrontation. As the battle raged, the humans launched their final gambit, a daring assault on the Draylon flagship, Aurelia, the symbol of their power and the nexus of their command structure. A small fleet of human stealth ships, equipped with advanced cloaking devices, infiltrated the heart of the Draylon formation. They bypassed enemy lines and made their way to the flagship, where they delivered a devastating strike on the command core, disabling the flagship's ability to issue orders. The Draylon leadership was thrown into chaos. But as the flagship fell silent, a new wave of resistance emerged. The Xiran, who had secretly infiltrated Draylon forces, turned the tide. Once loyal to the Draylon's cause, they had long ago recognized the failure of the old powers and sided with the humans in secret. Now, they revealed themselves, using their telepathic abilities to sever the mental links between the Draylon leaders and their soldiers, sowing confusion and disarray among the remaining forces. As the Draylon fleet faltered, the ground forces of humanity and their allies surged forward. With the Draylon leadership shattered and their forces thrown into disarray, the remaining invaders were either destroyed or forced into surrender. In the final moments, as the last of the Draylon ships retreated into the void, Earth stood victorious. But the victory came at a tremendous cost. The battle had raged for days, and the city streets were scarred with the remnants of war. The human fleet, battered but intact, was hailed as the symbol of humanity's triumph. The Freeborn, their allies in this war, celebrated alongside their human counterparts, knowing that this victory was the dawn of a new age. But the battle for Earth was just the beginning. With the Draylon crushed and their power broken, the galaxy now stood on the edge of a new era, an era where humanity, not the ancient powers of the Elders, would take its place as the central force in galactic affairs. The question now wasn't whether humanity would survive, it was how far they would rise. The old guard was gone. The age of humans had arrived. The war had been won. Earth was no longer a battleground, but a beacon. A symbol of humanity's resilience, adaptability, and unyielding spirit. In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy began to take notice, humanity had proven itself as a force to be reckoned with, not just by defeating the ancient and powerful Draylon, but by doing so with unwavering conviction, against impossible odds. But as the dust settled and the echoes of war began to fade, a new challenge emerged. How would humanity wield its newfound power? The alliance of human and freeborn forces began a slow, methodical rebuilding process. Cities were repaired, governments restructured, and lives that had been shattered by the war were pieced together. Yet, for all their victory, there was an unspoken truth: the galaxy was no longer the same place it had been before. The ancient systems that had governed galactic affairs for millennia were broken, and the power vacuum left by the fall of the Draylon threatened to send the galaxy into chaos. Humanity, with its inherent adaptability, now faced the challenge of not just surviving, but leading. The Alliance for the Future was formed, an intergalactic council where the human representatives sat side by side with the leaders of the Freeborn Coalition, the Xiran, and other species that had once been oppressed by the Elder Powers. It was a gathering of minds from across the galaxy, each with their own unique culture, perspectives, and goals, now working toward a shared vision of progress. There was no longer a singular voice calling the shots, but a chorus, a new order that valued collaboration and innovation. Admiral Lena Garth, now celebrated as a galactic hero, was appointed as the first Chancellor of the Alliance for the Future. Her leadership during the war had been nothing short of legendary, but she knew the real work had just begun. The galaxy was in a fragile state, and it was crucial that humanity didn't make the same mistakes of the past. The war had shown them the cost of arrogance, and the value of unity. Her first order of business was clear: prevent the rise of another galactic power that could threaten the fragile peace they had fought so hard for. As the new Chancellor, Garth worked tirelessly to establish a galactic council that included all species, ensuring that no single species could dominate the others. The Alliance for the Future was built on the principles of equality, innovation, and respect. Each species was encouraged to contribute to the betterment of all, using their unique strengths to forge a new path forward. The Xiran, once feared for their mind-bending telepathic powers, now worked alongside humanity to share their knowledge of the universe's deeper mysteries. The Freeborn, whose warriors had fought valiantly beside the humans, now helped to guide the reconstruction of their devastated homeworlds, using the lessons they had learned through their own struggles. Yet, as with all great endeavors, there were those who resisted. Not every species or faction was ready to let go of the old ways. Many former power structures still clung to the belief that the galaxy's future should be ruled by the ancient, the powerful, the elite. The remnants of the Draylon loyalists, now scattered and broken, began to form a resistance movement, one that saw the rise of humanity as an affront to their place in the galaxy. But the human coalition and its allies were prepared. The days of blind obedience to ancient dogma were over. The resistance was swiftly quelled, not through military force, but through the strength of a united vision for the future, a vision that was stronger than any weapon. On Earth, the Council worked to heal the wounds of war. It wasn't just about rebuilding cities, it was about rebuilding trust. Humanity, for the first time in its history, was at the center of a new intergalactic community, not as conquerors, but as leaders who valued cooperation over domination. They opened their doors to trade, to cultural exchange, and to the sharing of knowledge. New technologies, once considered impossible, began to flow freely among the species. The galaxy had been united, but now it was on the verge of something greater, a shared destiny. Humanity's greatest triumph, however, came not from military might or political manipulation, but from the values they had always cherished: freedom, adaptability, and the belief that anyone, no matter their origin, could contribute to the greater good. These principles became the foundation of the Alliance for the Future, and soon, the entire galaxy began to see the fruits of this new order. As the years passed, the galaxy flourished. The war was a distant memory, a cautionary tale of what could happen when power was hoarded by the few. The new era was one of prosperity and progress, where each species could thrive in their own way, but with the understanding that their future was now intertwined. The galaxy was no longer a place of isolated empires, but a thriving, diverse community of interconnected worlds. Humanity, once a young and struggling species, had risen to the top, not through the sword, but through unity and vision. The age of humans had arrived, not as conquerors, but as the architects of a new era in which all species, great and small, could share in the galaxy's boundless potential. The galaxy had been reformed, but the real victory lay in the fact that it was now a galaxy in which no species would ever again be forced to bow to the old, stagnant powers. The age of humans had begun, and the future had never looked brighter.